Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I am here with a longtime friend and partner in crime, Allison Chaplot. Today we are talking about finding your space. And Allison is here for a two-part series. One of the things that I'm excited to have her share with you is her experience in practicing this wisdom and living this wisdom. On almost every episode, you hear about how we as teachers of this wisdom live it and share it. And it couldn't be better timed to hear from a real life person out there in the world, not only out there in the world, but Allison is the #1 real estate agent in multi-unit sales in San Francisco. And not only that, comes with years of experience in putting this wisdom to practical use, not only in her business, but also in her personal life. And I can't wait to dissect that with Allison in a little bit. But one of the reasons Allison really is here and what prompted me to invite her to join me is that this week, the energy is really the gift that we all receive this week is the ability to take ownership of our space. What does that really mean? All of us in our daily lives are trying to control, trying to own, trying to earn, trying to mark our territory, if you will, and what's important to us and what belongs to us and what's ours. And this week, the universe is pushing us to really claim what's only ours, what's uniquely ours, that not to worry, not to fear, to know that what's mine is mine and no one can take it from me. And not only in the world of real estate, but in basically every arena in life, there is that struggle, that push and pull, the fear, the worry that something is being taken from me, that I'm going to miss something, that if I don't fight or manipulate or retaliate, I'm going to lose something. And especially for this month of Scorpio, where if you've been listening for the last few weeks, you know that the tendency is to be in a state of worry, to create movies in your mind of what other people are doing or saying or how they're conspiring against you. And Allison and I are going to ease us out of the month of Scorpio and give you, the listeners, the tools to really make the most of the energy of the coming week. So in general, Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where Allison and me this week and next are going to share with you the most practical and powerful tools to take advantage of the gifts of this week and to watch out for the pitfalls. Inevitably, you're going to receive powerful and practical tools and wisdom that can serve you any day of the week, any week of the year. And so again, Allison, first of all, thank you for flying all the way to Los Angeles to be with me. I think first and foremost, we want to hear, how did you get into real estate? Because that by and within itself sets the stage for a lot of the work that you do and what's so inspiring about your story.
So I started in the business when I was in junior college. So I was in about 20 and I was showing houses while I was going to college. Decided that wasn't really for me. And then straight out of college, I got a job at a commercial firm working as an assistant and continued there for just under 10 years while I learned the practice of real estate. Investment real estate became my focus. And I had a really interesting push. I was one of the only women, maybe there was 1 or 2 women at that time in the commercial real estate world at a firm, Marcus & Millichap. There was a nationally based firm and I was there and I got a great start and I had a lot of help getting into the business and a lot of great people who surrounded me.
And at like midpoint while you were there, how did you find Kabbalah?
So I was always really curious about, okay, how am I going to get started? How am I going to get listings? How am I going to close deals? The pressure was really intense. And in fact, I'd had a mentor, a guy I worked with, and he was like, you're just not going to make it. Like, you don't have what it takes to sell real estate. And
that's lovely.
And I was like, oh my God, really? okay, well, why do you think that? And like, I always ask why. And I think that's a really big part of my story. And that's what got me into Kabbalah was I was like, well, why do you say that? And he was like, well, you're not very detail oriented and you don't take great notes. And he had some feedback. And I was like, okay, well, I think I can work on all of those things. And I was really frustrated and really scared on a daily basis. I had a lot of fear. I had to make 200 to 300 cold calls a week. And I just found it petrifying and I was frozen. And so I started Googling laws of prosperity, how to think and grow rich. And at that same day, I Googled Elisheva was teaching a class in San Francisco. I had no idea what I was showing up to. And I've been studying Kabbalah ever since. And here we are almost 20 years later. And there's been so many ups and downs, but it has been a remarkable journey that's continuing. Thank you. And that is how I got my start. And I stayed in real estate. My grandmother was also a real estate agent, well-known fact.
So this is a week in which I think for all of us, we're being called to examine what's ours, what we're working toward, what, I'll give you actually a teaching that can help us segue into, I think, what we hope to give over today is that, a lot of what we experience in our daily lives is a conflict between the ego and the soul. We talk about that a lot on Weekly Energy Boost. And the ego demands recognition, acknowledgement, status, respect, honor. And the soul knows that the body is a temporary vehicle. It's on loan. It's a rental. And the soul knows that even the gifts that we do create for ourselves, that we do, whether it's prosperity, whether it's wisdom, even our kids, right? Kabbalah teaches that even our kids are a loaner and they're just ours to manage and to empower to be beautiful and supportive and contributing citizens of the world. So when it comes to real estate, and I think not only real estate, but also sales in general, right? We all know that when we walk into a store and somebody comes up to us and is like, can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? It's a little bit like you push away from that needy energy because you don't want someone, I don't know, my sense is I'm looking for what's mine. I want to be free to feel what I feel connected to, and I don't want to be pushed either way. And I feel like more for you, Allison, in the work that you do, you're really helping people. You're that bridge. So I guess it's different when I'm looking for a top or a sweater or a dress or earrings. When people are looking for not only a home, but I also think an investment property, it's an acquisition of energy. Yeah. How do you see that dynamic play out? You're the bridge between the person who's looking to acquire more energy, even though it may be a building, it may be homes, it may be it may be land even, but your role is almost like the conductor in the orchestra, finding the right tempo, the right instruments, the right piece of music. Tell us about how that looks for you, especially through what you've learned in Kabbalah.
Yeah. So it's a couple questions buried in there, but I think when it comes to I'll start with somebody who owns real estate. So a lot of my clients own the real estate and they're calling me, should I sell? Should I hold? Those are usually they've already bought. So we'll start with that. And a lot of times by asking them questions and taking myself completely out of the realm of the answer, obviously in sales, in being a real estate, in the business of real estate, you, by closing deals, that's how you make money. Right. So, but it's not my first thought. It's definitely my last thought. The success is a result, and that's directly related to this wisdom. So when someone calls me, it's like, well, I'm considering selling. That's typically the first question. It can happen 10 years from when it happens. It can happen 10 days later. I'm always like, okay, the first question is why? Why are you selling? What are we going through? And there's usually a really good response. And then it's like, okay, how are we going to do it? And based on how they respond to answering the question, it's like, how is that process going to look? And oftentimes it's like, well, the building's been in my, my family for 3 generations. And I said, okay, so, tell me about that. And like, how did we get the building and what are we doing? And who do you want to see the building to go to? And that's actually a really interesting point. I do think when I sit in front of my clients, one of the first things that comes to my mind is, okay, who would they like to sell the building to? Where do they see this building going? And there's this amazing connection between people and their real estate. And I think it's often overlooked that whether you're buying or selling, when you walk up to a building, whether you're renting it, you're leasing it, you're working in it, you're having lunch in it, you have a connection to the real estate. And so I'm asking myself, okay, can I see this person separating from the building? Who do I see buying it? And I look at the process and I ask why, and then we go from there.
Well, I want to point out something you glossed over really quickly.
Yeah.
That I don't want to take for granted, and I want to put out there as a main ingredient in achieving success in any industry, obviously sales, and then of course in real estate, is Allison said she puts her bottom line last on the list. And the Kabbalists refer to that as removing your agenda. That if you're ever really going to achieve lasting success, you have to check your agenda. Agenda is always going to be there. If you're sitting there thinking, I never have agenda, you're wrong, and you need to dig more deeply. Agenda doesn't necessarily mean I want to make money. It can even be I want to be known as someone who's altruistic. That's an agenda as well. I want to be famous. I want to be the nice guy. I want to be needed again, right? I want to maintain my value. Everybody has agenda. And when you get that phone call, it can be from a friend, from a potential client, from a potential suitor, it doesn't matter. By checking your agenda or acknowledging it and then saying, okay, you get in the back seat, I have work to do, you all automatically remove a layer of limitation that would interfere with your success.
Yeah. So taking that further, definitely. So I get really excited. So last year I had 2 of my biggest sales in my career. I mean, like huge gifts. And both of them, I walked up to the building and I met the people and I wanted it so bad and I was competing. And so in those moments, and I remember having conversations, I really had this opportunity to say, okay, I got to push this away. I got to act like it doesn't, like I don't have to have it. And in that pushing it away, being what's meant to be mine will be mine, showing up, often real estate agents, are like, okay, well, if I just price it a little bit more, I'm going to win the listing based on pricing. Well, I've tried everything, right? 20 years in the business. I may have priced it a little bit more. What happens then is you get a listing, you can't sell it. You eventually sell it. You take that relationship, that it's just run down the wrong corridor. The person ends up selling the building. They're exhausted. The chaos that ensued. No one wants that story. So instead I show up, I price it fairly based on where the market thinks it will go. Really put my best foot forward and release the result. And it has just, it makes for this really clear energy, and you really start to feel, and for me, okay, I feel things. Why is this person selling, or what are they doing? What do they need from me? Oftentimes in my conversation, I'll ask, what is it that you're looking for in a real estate agent? And I try to hear, because everyone knows what the result of a real estate transaction is. It's everything in between that's really why I'm there. And I do trust that I have been called for a reason. I believe that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be when I'm there, and really just try to show up for that person regardless. I'm human. I'm highly competitive, but I really try to push it away if I want it more. So to me, it's a sign when I really want something, I got to say, okay, why do I want this? Where's it coming from? Okay, competition and desire is an amazing thing. It's always a gift. Now, how do I show up and kind of put that in my rears and just be there?
So that, again, another nugget that you just tossed out there for our listeners is the process of negotiating when it comes to, I really want this, but according to Kabbalah, when you really want something, you work toward it, you work toward it, you work toward it.
Yeah.
And then you basically say, I don't even want it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Actually, like somebody can call and, we've decided to work with you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm so grateful. But then 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh, great. And it's just part of the story. It's not all consuming. And I am always very, very grateful for the clients who choose my team and I to do the business. But yeah, I really try to stay out of being connected.
What do you mean when you say that you try to stay out of being connected?
Connected to
attached?
Attached, connected to the result. And the easiest way, in a very practical way, to not be attached to the result, because it's gotten easier and easier in my career, is the busier I am. So, I work with agents, and agents will have 1 or 2 or 3 deals a year, and they'll say, Allison, I can't just say no, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. I only have 1 or 2 deals. Like I need to feed my family. And, I can speak from that experience. My first 10 years in the business, I barely scraped by. And I always say, you don't compromise, don't take the deal. Another deal is coming. By saying no, you're actually closer to the right deal. And
so you're saying not to take every deal that comes your way?
I say no to a lot of deals. And by the way, a lot of the deals I say no to end up coming in way better ways. Like they'll circle back. The seller will be like, oh, I'm really glad I didn't do it, but now I'm ready to do it. The buyer wasn't ready. Switching gears, this comes to my mind. So I do take a lot of responsibility when choosing the buyer and really going through the process. Like this morning, I have multiple offers on a listing that I have, and thinking about, so when you're trading real estate, who's going to buy it? The person that's going to buy it is going to determine who lives there, who they're going to rent the units to, who they're going to meet, where their kids are going to go to school, who's going to get married. And so I really, I want to make sure it goes to the right person. And by restricting in the process and making sure you get the right buyer, obviously the real estate market we're in right now is more challenging than it has been in the last couple of years. And in fact, some would say that this is one of the most challenging markets in the last 20 years. I'd say there's a lot of opportunity, but that, making sure that the buyer that's being chosen isn't just is not the buyer I'm choosing. The seller who owns the real estate is choosing, and the universe is choosing. Because if I'm choosing, I may choose the wrong buyer, and 30 days later it doesn't go through, and then so I really try to stay out of it and just show up to the process and let people reveal themselves. And shockingly, a lot of people will always say, well, I want to go with a little bit lesser offer, but this person just feels like the right fit, or I feel really good about it. And I was talking to my sister yesterday, who's in the process of buying a house. And I said to her, very rarely do I hear people regret not buying a piece of real estate. Oftentimes I hear people regretting buying the real estate, but very rarely does someone say, oh, I regret not buying it. Sure. Does it happen? Yeah. But by and large, not really, because what's meant to be yours will be yours. And so I'd say step aside from the market, the interest rates. It's your destiny. It's your connection. Ignore the noise in the market and do what's right for you. And I think this wisdom really connects you to finding out what that is and not being like a pinball to life.
Right.
The real estate is just a manifestation. I mean, getting, whether it's land, a home, a commercial, it is a very exciting thing to look at a person and their real estate because it's a manifestation. It's an extension of them.
It is. And like, I wish we could listen to what you just said in slow motion so that I can like break down the principles and wisdom you just flung out there. Like, oh, it just so many.
With so many years of teaching.
No, but it really like it's amazing to listen to you talk. The first thing you said was about being busy.
Yes. And
there is a very deep concept in the study of the 10 luminous emanations that talks about how we're like, if something actually manifests, that's not us. We're just here to be in that state of creation,
right,
of desiring, of making things happen. And challenges come up from people when they're so attached to the manifestation that can be what does happen or what doesn't happen. Sometimes people are so, they make a deal and they celebrate it and they bask in it and they roll around in it without working on the next.
Yes.
And other times, other people are so attached to what didn't happen or how it was supposed to happen that they block that creative process from continuing with any other person, any other project, any other relationship in their lives. So being in that state of drawing things to you, like you said, calling people, moving on. We haven't said it in a long time, but we used to have a motto. Wow, great, next.
Oh, I said it this morning about something after listening to the Kabbalah 1 class last night. Someone really did something I did not like. And I was like, oh, wow, not surprising. Okay, next. And I laughed and I was like, and it passed. I mean, I got off the flight and I was like, oh, why was I so upset about that? And it's just this really practical.
Well, it works, and it works both ways. Yeah. It's not only when something, somebody does something they should or shouldn't have done, you get an email you don't like, the deal falls through, you say, wow, which is that, you can react.
Yeah.
Great. That happened.
Yeah.
And then next. And you can also say it. I mean, I think it also helps to say it when you're successful, because then you're not dwelling in what's already happened. You're already focusing on what's next. And there's another beautiful teaching around how you don't want to create space between one success and the next success, meaning you just want to keep moving.
Yeah.
The whole idea of standing still, not being in the creative state, is actually what trips us up.
Yes. You got to keep going. So there's these two guys in my market. We're always duking it out for one. But it's really interesting, and I would never admit this to either of them, and I'm not going to bring up their names. But oftentimes we talk.
But they're listening now, and they're hearing the truth.
And they're commercial real estate brokers, very successful in their right. And I do find that real estate agents, the deeply successful real estate agent is highly creative and pretty connected to the universe because you get to see the awes and the wonder. But both of them will call me time to time and just be like, nothing is happening. The world is falling apart. I have no business in sight. And I think to myself, ooh, they're going to get really successful because they're just sitting there grinding it out despite what's happening. And they have all this doubt. And in real estate and in my business, in my practice, every time I get a ton of doubt, get a ton of success typically later because I just get busy. So my response to doubt is busy.
Okay, give us an example of how that looks, because that is really powerful. What does the doubt look like?
Yeah.
And how do you turn it around?
So in my business, it is usually a response to what is happening now as a result of the seeds that I planted way long ago. And yeah, I'll get these listings. They'll be really successful, but that isn't from what I'm doing today. It's just happening today. But like right now, the market's shifting, interest rates in my entire career have been going down. So now they're going up. And so naturally people are on pause, and like tying it back to our earlier conversation, people call me like, well, what do you think? And I listen and I'm like, well, tell me a little bit about your plan. And sometimes the message I get is probably now's not the moment. And And so having a lot more of those conversations, I think like one of the things I'm doing is, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but this is hard and it's even cringy to share. But, there's people that are hard for me to call. Right? Like I just don't really enjoy the process. And they're hard because for a variety of different reasons. Like maybe it's just scary. They own a lot of buildings. Like, by the way, that's like, I'm not adverse to getting scared. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to call them. And so Natalie and Rebecca are my team. And I was like, okay. And so we started a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, okay, so who's Allison going to call today? And I've been calling these people, and the light that's coming from these conversations. I sold this big building to a guy who closed like right before the market went down, and I called him. He's like, Allison, you wouldn't believe it. The building is doing better than ever. My rent rolls up 10%. And I'm like, oh my God, what a gift. But I was feeling like, so you just don't ever know. I'm not connected to the results, but I do scary things. And I try every day to be a little bit uncomfortable in my business. And that's been really, I think that gets me going. And it helps.
Getting uncomfortable is actually, you could apply that to any area of life. And that's why I don't want to just leave it there and move on to the next. The whole idea of being more influential, more prosperous, more greater success, however you define it, wiser, kinder, more compassionate, it is directly linked to your willingness to get uncomfortable. And I have seen with you, obviously many students over the years, the moment that you're willing to do the thing that is most uncomfortable for you, the gates open. Mm-hmm. And not necessarily with that person or in that area of life. But if you're willing to have those difficult conversations, do the things that put butterflies in your stomach or make you nauseous, or like you said, cringe. Right. Like, you're in many of those cases, part of the magic comes from lowering your ego, being humble enough to still do the work, to not be like, that's beneath me or I'm above that. Right. Allison, you specifically, but I think a lot of us could say, well, I'm at a level now where I don't need to do that anymore. People just come to me. I know people that just basically wait for referrals. And what does that say? That says I live my life according to how successful, or, if I have X money in the bank account, I don't need to work that hard. And the underlying message there is money controls me. The more money I have, the less I work. The less money I have, the harder I work. And the universe gets the message, well, in order for you to be in that creative, initiating state, something needs to be taken away from you. And that is a dangerous message to give to the universe.
Oh, I've done it. You've seen it. To try not to do it again.
Going back, I get that whole idea of when the doubts come up.
Yeah.
Being able to turn it around. Not having doubts doesn't mean I'm sure this is going to work.
Right.
It just means that work with what you do know. Go to what does work, and the doubts will work themselves out.
I do remember Mordecai saying, this had to be a decade ago. He's like, doubt's a great thing, Allison. Like when it means like a success is around the corner. And I remember thinking, maybe it was a year or two ago, I was coming out of COVID and the lockdown, and I was like, God, I don't have any doubt. Like, I'm just so certain it's going to work out. I'm like, oh no, I better get to it. And it's true. Some of my best years came of that. And, there's a lot of reasons, but I do think that there's a relationship to doubt and success. I don't know what exactly the connection is, but certainly we're human, and I have a whole variety of emotions and thoughts, and it's always really interesting to, like, you and I work on, and I think it's currently where I'm at, how to show up for my life and show up for clients regardless of how I'm feeling. And that's one of the things I'm really focusing. It's like, well, regardless of how I feel, I'm going to make these phone calls. And that's really like, that was, taking a lesson and a tidbit from you and saying like, okay, how am I going to apply this? I've done this one thing for 12 or 13 years, and this like small little thing in my business. And it's one of the things I'm known, it's a marketing piece, and I do it really consistently, and it's nothing like groundbreaking. But I've just done it for so long, and I've been really having the thought, it's always the small things. It's never the big things that really determine the course. I think a lot of us don't get the big things wrong. It's the small things every day. And so
I have to remember that. That's a good message for me too.
well, hey.
Okay. So one piece I don't want to miss that you did touch on, but we didn't go into too deeply, is the negotiation process.
Sure.
I remember many years ago, you had, and I don't want to make, I mean, maybe your own personal experience as a buyer and seller comes into this conversation, but I remember a number of years ago, quite a few years ago, you had a few deals that were set to close and they all fell through.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was like 4 deals that in the course of 1 week just disintegrated. And that obviously would have been a lot of bottom line, agenda aside. And we were working on, you know, consciousness, something better is coming, what's mine is mine, all those things. And then sure enough, within like a month, you had one deal that was the same value of the 4 that had dropped.
If not more. Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people fall short. And that one of the reasons I loved the title of this week's episode is that sometimes we are intimidated by the process. We don't, the negotiation process, and it can be anything. You could be negotiating with your parents, your kids, your spouse. We happen to be talking about exchange of property but the story or the procedure lends itself to negotiating anything. You could be trying to convince your family to shift their perspective about something. You could be talking to employees about a change in a company policy. You need to get them on board, right? So when it comes to negotiating, what would you say are the cornerstone things that you remember when people are aggressive, hustling, threatening, vindictive, when they're not? I mean, I know that you happen to draw special clients to you, but in the process, it can get nasty, it can get ugly, people can shut down. How do you deal with the human part of negotiating?
So as a broker, right, I'm in the middle of negotiation, and I do think having brokers and having the middleman is amazing. There's a reason there's a middleman. Middlemans are always changing, and I think you look at that. And if I take a client on the buy side who wants something really bad, having a broker is the best thing for them, because there's like this division between it, and they can really...
By the way, Allison's comment about having the middleman, that's one of the reasons that therapy is good for couples and families, that mediation is good for couples and families, is having that witness, somebody in observation of the process. And we can go into, there's the whole idea of the 3 columns and having that balance. It's hard to be in balance when there's 2 forces. Yeah. The third force actually balances the energy of the 2 others. It's like a strainer,
right? Like I'll strain out what's important. So a client will come to me, and so I guess to tie it back to negotiation. So in negotiation, really, I think the first thing is like quiet the scene. Just wipe it clean. Be like,
do you have a whistle like a coach?
It's like, wow. Okay. So let's say you got 10 offers, like just high stakes, or high volume, maybe not high stakes, because my stake is low, right? Like I'm not the seller and I've got 10 buyers. Clean the slate, clean the noise, listen to what everyone's saying, be really transparent. One of the things I really try to do is I'd be really concise and really clear with my messaging in negotiation. The seller will not take this number, for example, and these are our minimum terms. I'm really clear. And I said, but if there's more that you want to do because there's a lot of interest, then you should do that. But if you don't do this, don't expect to be responded to. So from like a practical level, I'm very clear. I'm not wishy-washy, and I set really good boundaries as to, well, when we're going to respond, how are we going to respond. I control the timing. And I think this is a big reason I don't have a ton of chaos. It's like, well, we'll be responding after 12 on Monday. And we're like, well, what about the weekend? I'm like, well, there won't be any conversation on the weekend. We'll be responding at this time. And so then people really don't like that. And the great thing about them not liking that is then everyone gets really clear as to what they want. And oftentimes between the first time offers are set and the second time is I put in intentionally some time in between it, because what happens is people decide that they really, really want it. Oh, wait, I didn't really want it. And so I let the universe shake it out for me. And then we show up and you're like, okay, this is who wants it. This is how much they want it for. And the universe tends to do the work for you in the negotiation if you give it a little bit of time. You don't always have the benefit of time, but if you do have it, I use it. It works for you. And when I have a buyer or a buyer's agent being super aggressive with me, which happens frequently, I really just say, hey, this is when we're going to be responding. And they say, well, if I don't get a response by this time, then I'm out. I'm like, well, if that's how they feel, if they don't want it tomorrow, then I really don't think they would have closed. And I'm like, oh, right. And you know what? The person that wants it will show up tomorrow.
So true.
But it's really true in life too. It's like that sweater. I really want the sweater.
Or the car.
And the car and all those things. And, I think we're not probably going to talk about it, but, cars are real estate on some level, sure. Right? And you know how many conversations we've had around timing and my cars, right? Always a car deal. But timing is important, and letting the universe have time and, having this wisdom, I do think is a completely having an edge on everything else. Because you kind of know, like, let's take farming, for example. Well, so when do you plant your seeds? When is the grass growing? There is a music.
I think
to
with
the season.
that deserves more time than we have for today. So maybe in next week's episode, we can make sure to talk about the timing and the different tools that you use.
Timing and negotiation hand in hand. They
Absolutely.
It's a big part. So when it comes to negotiation, understanding what people really want, not what they're saying, giving it time, letting the universe work it out, really helpful. And then really taking myself out of it, because what I want, it's what the seller wants, or it's what my buyer, it's what my client wants. I'm trying to communicate for them. I'm the middleman, and really taking myself out of it. Even if I think it's the perfect thing for them, it might not be, because I can't see the whole picture.
Wow.
So
that's really powerful. I'm excited to continue the conversation. Thank you, Allison, for being here.
Yes, thank you.
I want to just summarize really quickly. We talked about a lot of things, and we're going to put a pin in it and
sounds good.
Keep going next week. But Allison talked about removing your agenda. Again, that's something that you can do, whatever industry you're in, whatever your role is. It can be work related. It can be relational. All of us have agenda. We need to work on it. Really detaching. I think detaching is one of the secrets to success in any, and you could be, I don't know, I always make the joke, putting tips on shoelaces. But if you're the more detached you'll be to the outcome or to the result, the better you're going to be at everything that you do. We talked a lot about staying busy, being in that creative mode, not in that manifesting mode. The manifesting is the result, but the real work is in the creating, as well as, like what you just said, letting the universe take over, but involving, really knowing that you're just a messenger, you're just the middleman, and stepping aside so that the universe can work it out. It's going to be even better than we could possibly force it to happen.
100%.
Wow. So I also want to make sure that everybody knows next week we have a free Sacred Sounds Global Meditation on Tuesday. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week too, but I want to make sure everybody knows The link is in our bio if you'd like to sign up, as well as in the show notes. We're going to be focusing next week's energy, so we can talk about it next week, but just want to make sure everybody sets their calendar. It's November 14th, which is a Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific. More details to come on that. I also want you to know that obviously next week we'll be continuing the conversation, but if this was a powerful message for you, share it. There are a lot of people out there that don't realize that the universe, the light, the creator is involved in things like sales and transactions and helping you find your new home, your new business, your new car, your new sweater. And really this week is about filling that space, owning your energy and learning how to use it to negotiate, to create, and to extend your circle of influence. Weekly Energy Boost is available on all podcast platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We have a website, weeklyenergyboost.com, where you can find our archives, send us messages, and of course, click the donate button and support our podcast. That homepage has information on how you can reach Allison and all of the awesome stuff that our guests and hosts are busy with. And if you're listening on podcast, please like, rate, share, review, all those good things. And both Allison and I will see you next week with
Sounds
Weekly
good.
Energy Boost.
Looking forward to it.